Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you to Live from the Woods, Unearthing Christian Wisdom for Our Times. My name is Lanny, and I'm the curator of UP Wild, and our topic tonight is standing on holy ground. As we walk through this nature trail set in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, we will find ourselves ending at Lake Superior. During our walk, we're going to hear from a few different voices from the UP Wild community sharing their own personal reflections and experiences with what standing on holy ground or sacred ground means to them. And when we get to Lake Superior, we will end with a closing reflection on what it meant when God said to Moses, "You are standing on holy ground." And what does that mean for our own lives? As always, we hope that this time in the woods brings peace and healing upon you, wherever you are on your journey. And as we are building a community together, I ask you to please say hello right now in the comment box.
When I walk into the woods with my family, I have a feeling of connection with not only the world around me, but with my own sense of self, my feelings of tapering of the emotional overload that I get in my life on a daily basis. And I also have a connection with my children. I think that something that I have been looking for in my life is a way to find a community of people that have an understanding of God and God's way and the ability to relate that to the real world that we live in today. So looking for that guidance and that wisdom so I can teach my children this and have them understand that this is just a part of our life to be on this earth. And in addition to that, that we have to take care of this earth while we're here, because our spirit will go on and our earth will go on if we take care of it.
I think to me, sacred ground is that place and that moment where you are confronted with that thing that is larger than yourself. That moment where you realize that as hard as you try, you could never create a tree. Or you just suddenly feel like your size, you're smaller, there's something larger, there's something bigger, there's something deeper than yourself. I remember this moment on 6th Avenue, right by Rockefeller Center, and the traffic was whizzing by, and just so much noise and much everything going on, just tumultuous. And I remember looking up and seeing this monarch butterfly floating across the traffic, and at that moment it was sacred ground. It was realizing that with all of our power and all of our technology and all of our wealth and even all the desire, even if we wanted to, we could never ever create something as simple and beautiful as a butterfly. And in that moment it was sacred ground. Even in the midst of all that tumultuous churning, I paused and watched the butterfly and knew that there was something bigger than myself.
I'm often asked why I spend so much time hiking and out in nature. And if I'm being honest with myself, it's because I'm thirsty for it. I seek time in nature because there's a hunger within me that can only be satisfied when I'm within that living world. There are times that I long for places like the desert, the expanses of rocks and sand in Utah and California, with colors so subtle you have to slow down. There are times that I crave the mountains for their solitude, for their majestic stance, their age and wisdom, and their humbling heights. There are times I wander in the winter and delight in the snow and its silence. And there are times that I'm overwhelmed at the base of a tree as it grows up towards the sky and shoots its roots down into the ground. I'm not whole without it, without wilderness, without nature, without creation. I belong in it. I am a part of it. I don't feel this way when I'm standing on concrete or asphalt, or when I'm inside of a building. All of these were designed by humans and for humans. All of creation was designed by God, and we are included in that. God granted us stewardship of all of creation. I'm enchanted by the living world. I'm also overwhelmed. The scale can be too large to fathom. So I go hiking to be reminded of this great responsibility. I go hiking to reconnect to the living world. I go hiking to rediscover the wonder and the beauty. And I go hiking to be re-enchanted.
when we do everything indoors, we literally wall ourselves off from the natural world around us. It's in striking contrast to the way Jesus worked, if you just sort of studying that through the Gospels, where the only time he went indoors was occasionally for a meal or a healing, but to teach in the temple and to overturn things. The rest of the time, he's portrayed outside. Any time we walk outside, we're walking on, as Moses heard, you're standing on holy ground, and that is actually always true if we open ourselves to seeing it, to feeling it, to believing it.
So, the question has been asked. What does it mean when God said to Moses that he was standing on holy ground? How do we essentially apply this to our times? This is a good question. As we hear from the text compiled by St. Gregory of Nyssa, Moses did excel himself when he decided to devote a long time to the philosophical life, it's been called, as a solitary in the wilderness, where he lived with his family. When he was enlightened by the fire upon the bush, and his hearing was illumined as well with the beams of life, by the beams of the Word, by means of the Word, the Logos, who we understand to be Christ. There, he stripped from his feet what Gregory calls the dead coverings of skin. That's quite literally what his sandals were. Moses lived alone in the mountains, away from all the turmoil of the marketplace, and there in the wilderness he cared for his sheep. And after he had passed some time living like this, the history says about a very awesome and inspiring theophany occurred. Sometime around noon, a light brighter than the sun dazzled his eyes, and he was astonished at what was a strange sight. And he looked up at the mountain and saw a bush, and from which this light was flaming up like a fire. So when he saw the branches of the bush sprout up in flames, kind of as if they were in pure water, he said to himself, "I will go and see this great sight." Yet, notice as the text says here, as soon as he said this, he no longer received the marvel of the light with this sight alone, but, which is most astounding of all, his hearing too was illumined, as I mentioned, by the rays of light. So the light's grace was distributed to both senses, illuminating the sight with flashing rays and lighting the way for the hearing with undefiled teachings. So the voice from the light forbade Moses to approach the mountain burdened with these lifeless sandals. He removed the sandals from his feet, and so stood on that ground on which the divine light was shining. Here is the giver of all that is good, the life bearer, the one who has created life, who is life. How could we walk on this holy, set apart, sanctified ground with lifeless things, which sandals, at least the sandals he was wearing, were from a dead animal? Moses went down to Egypt, and he took with him his wife and his children, and they continued on, and as the story goes, and as we know. Now, it's upon us who seek to live an anointed life, like Moses, that essentially the truth will shine. And as Gregory puts, illuminating the eyes of our soul with its own rays. And this truth, which was then manifested by, in Moses' case, the ineffable and mysterious illumination which came to him, is God. So in the same way that Moses on that occasion attained to this knowledge, so now does everyone, us in our day, like him, divest ourselves of the earthly coverings, our sandals, our clothes, all those things that are of this realm, and looks to the light shining from the bramble bush, from the tree unconsumed. That is, to the radiance which shines upon us through this thorny flesh, and which is, as the gospel says, the true light and the truth itself. A person like this, which we're all called to be, becomes able to help others to healing, to salvation. And Gregory finishes by saying, to destroy the tyranny which holds power wickedly, and to deliver to freedom everyone who is held in evil servitude. This is the true importance of this passage, where we hear of Moses who, standing on this holy ground in which that divine light shone, we too, after him, must take off our sandals, that is, to take off all our earthly cares and put them aside. For all has been revealed to us, and we are called into participation of the divine being. Peace be with you.